So getting into the nitty gritty and looking at the strategy phase, so defining the strategy. So here we're looking at understanding your motivations, defining your business outcomes, and then prioritizing your project workloads. So those that have been on previous webinars potentially would have seen this slide before. This is the migration triggers. So the things that really the whole business needs to take into account to be able to get a full view of why we would look to move to the cloud or why we would look to Azure. So basic examples here would be your data center contract expiry or any on-premise end of life hardware that you've got as a catalyst for looking at potentially moving to the cloud. So a lot of customers that we speak with obviously come into that bracket, and obviously the key thing there's huge additional value from maybe moving from a capex to an opex model, for example, but also all the additional costs that are associated with a data center, for example. So using the TCO calculator on the Azure website would be a fantastic starting point there. Business continuity. Key thing that we've had in recent times is obviously COVID. Being able to have a strong and cohesive business continuity strategy that's underpinned by the cloud is really something that people are looking at in terms of moving to the cloud, and as a catalyst for moving to the cloud. Being able to work remotely, not just from an office suite perspective, but being able to replicate your office environment anywhere, whether that's people working from home, whether that's people working away from the office, on the road, for example. Those are key types of things that are driving people to do cloud migrations. Cash flow challenges really falls into that OPEX and CAPEX type discussion. So moving to an OPEX based model to be able to not have huge CAPEX costs with regards to hardware. Cybersecurity threats. You know, you'd have to be living under a rock if you didn't hear about Microsoft spending $1 billion per year on security. So, you know, there's cybersecurity threats that are evolving all the time with the modern age of technology. Using a cloud platform that's got so much investment into security and so much investment into knowledge and protection around security is something that's very appealing. And the other key thing is being able to rapidly scale. So being able to roll out infrastructure and apps at the click of a button within a matter of minutes or seconds even, depending how fast you are, is something that's really appealing as part of cloud migration. And then budget and resource constraints. So really looking at, you know, being able to free up budgets for other projects. And that's more about shifting budget from BAU type tasks to more of the innovation type tasks. So really looking to get more bang for your buck by innovating with your budgets rather than just doing the day-to-day work that could be handled by something like Azure, for example, especially on the infrastructure level, and obviously benefits from the huge economies of scale that Microsoft has. So those are just some of the sort of migration triggers, but the key thing as part of the CAF framework that we're getting across here is that these are things you need to consider as part of your planning split stage and your actual strategy. What are the elements that are going to impact your strategy? In terms of motivations, this is sort of another step forward upon that, is really just classifying those various elements that we've just spoken about. So looking at those from a migration and an innovation perspective. So it's really important just to say, okay, well, we need to go from A to B because our data center is now becoming end of life, for example. Why don't we look at innovation as well at the same time? What additional things can we do that improves our organization as a whole? So the types of things that you look at innovation is trying to improve your customer experiences, transforming your products and services, being able to disrupt the current market that you're in with new products and services, build new technology capabilities, and obviously being able to make sure that you can scale effectively to meet market or geographical demands. So really this is about making sure you get all of your sort of migration motivations up front. These are all the various things that we can look at that will trigger us or tell us that we need to move to an Azure based platform or Azure environment. But what can we then do further than that? What motivations do we have once we've got into Azure from an innovation perspective? What can we do differently to improve our organization as a whole? And obviously a key part of the strategic planning stage is key stakeholders, really identifying who your key stakeholders are and bringing them together. So who is the first one? And identify those that are impacted by a migration. So it could be senior leadership, it could be heads of departments, obviously it could be your end users as well that are going to be impacted by any cloud transformation. What makes them a key stakeholder? So really classifying, what impact do they have on an Azure migration or any project that you do within Azure, understanding what their desires and their objectives are. Why are they a key stakeholder for the project? Senior leadership is a core example there. They are a key stakeholder because if we don't sort of map to their desires, map to their objectives from a business perspective, then they're not going to give us the budget to actually go ahead with this particular project. They're not going to help us upskill. They're not going to bring the whole organization together to back us on this cloud transformation project. And then the how is really how to bring them on side. What can we do to be able to help them understand the values and the desires that they have are going to be fulfilled by this particular project? And this can be things like your business case. This could be things like user adoption plans. It could be user champions, for example. These are the types of things that all need to be figured out in the strategic planning stage. And then once you understand what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and who, it's really what are you trying to achieve out of it? What are the business outcomes? What are the objectives? So once you've engaged with those various stakeholders, it's about building out a priority plan. What are your priorities that you're going to achieve, and then what are they, and how do they map to the different desires and requirements from your stakeholders? So these are just some examples that need to be thought about within this particular stage as part of the of that CAF framework. The fiscal scenarios. So would it be that you're looking to increase your revenue by saving costs? That can be just a migration motivation because you're going to undoubtedly save costs in certain scenarios by just moving to Azure, but also driving new profits. And that's where the innovation comes in. How do we offer a better service to customers or new solutions or create new market share, for example? That's going to drive more profits. Agility, being able to think about how the benefits are in terms of time to market, provisioning times, how we respond to changes as an organization as a whole. Our reach, the other key thing there, again, if you've got a sales director, why should I back this funding into this particular project? Well, the reach basically means that we're able to gain global access. We can sell our application globally within Azure across various regions and various continents. And the other key thing with Azure is, again, data sovereignty, that you're able to sell or you're able to offer solutions within the sovereignty rules of that particular jurisdiction. Customer engagement, so obviously meeting your customer expectations, making sure that you're still offering a quality level of service that they would expect. This doesn't necessarily have to be an improvement. It could be that some of the architecture that you're on currently is not meeting the expectations of customers, or in a short period of time it will start to not meet their expectations. So it only has a shelf life, for example. And then performance. We really want to make sure that we're a performing organization, highly available services and global applications. Another key thing is security and compliance. So making sure that our security and compliance is taken care of into the future. And again, moving to the cloud, so Azure, for example, it helps with compliance audits, it helps with regulation audits by simply saying, look, all of our workloads are within Azure, and these are the compliance elements that are part of Microsoft's Azure offering. We've got a tick in the box already for this particular audit, rather than having to manually show the auditor these are the types of things that we've got in place across our infrastructure. And then finally, from a business outcomes perspective, it's really looking at basically getting the message across that everything isn't necessarily just a technical decision. So it's really about mapping out business motivators as well as technology motivators. So a key example there, and it's really how you articulate things, is data center contracts coming to an end. What does that actually mean? For an IT department, that's fair enough. We need to do something about that. But for the rest of the business, that doesn't really mean a lot. It's a cost saving of £15,000 a year, for example. IT operational constraints mean that supporting app development is difficult. Actually, that means the rest of the business, we've got the ability to support modern application deployments. Insecure and vulnerable services across a distributed estate. if you bring in visible governance aligned across all deployments in real time, we're able to basically manage that in a real time basis and actually prove and show that we're governed in the right way. So these are all benefits that, or really what we're trying to get across with this slide is part of the CAF framework, is making sure that your business outcomes are not just technical and not just technology orientated, but it's also a wider delivery across the rest of the business.